square bracket. Clang, closing square bracket. The sound of the blade shook the bay. Closing square bracket. Dracula Mahawk did not waste time charging up. He suddenly pressed his wrist down and swung violently. Closing square bracket. A jet black sword chi that spanned the heavens and earth was born out of thin air. The solid ice, rubble, and abandoned gun emplacements along its path were instantly ground into powder. The world-destroying power blasted straight toward Whitebeard. Closing square bracket. On the bow of the Moby Dick, Whitebeard, wearing his cape and hooked up to IV drips, faced this peerless slash capable of severing mountains and seas. He did not dodge, evade, or move a single inch. He merely watched coldly with indifferent eyes, completely disregarding this strike. Closing square bracket. Just as the black sword chi was about to reach an inch in front of Whitebeard. Closing square bracket. A hulking, sturdy figure suddenly burst out from the pirate formation. Closing square bracket. It was the 3rd Division Commander, Diamond Jozu. Closing square bracket. His entire body was instantly covered in incomparably hard diamond armor. He crossed his arms to block, forcefully using his flesh and diamond body to intercept Dracula Mahawk's supreme slash with his bare hands. Closing square bracket. Boom, closing square bracket. The terrifying sword chi slammed into Jozu's arms. The sharp blade was firmly blocked by the diamond hard body, unable to advance even an inch. Closing square bracket. However, the majestic impact of this strike was too terrifying. The horrifying force crushed wildly through his arms into his entire body. Jozu's legs plowed 2 deep pits into the ice, his muscles tensed to the limit, his teeth clenched tightly, and his blood surged endlessly. Closing square bracket. He exhausted all his brute strength and suddenly heaved his arms upward. Closing square bracket. Ha! Closing square bracket. Amidst a deafening roar, the jet black sword chi, capable of destroying everything, was forcefully deflected from its trajectory. It shot into the sky, pierced through the clouds, blasted toward the high altitude, and finally exploded in the firmament. Closing square bracket. The power of a single strike, shaking the heavens and earth, was deflected by Diamond Jozu, who risked his life to block it with his bare hands. Closing square bracket. The sky canopy's lens slowly swept across the entire frozen battlefield. Closing square bracket. Although Dracula Mahawk's earth-shattering strike had been forcibly deflected into the sky and dissipated, a pitch-black, bottomless rift that ran through the battlefield remained on the rock-hard, 10,000-meter ice plain. Closing square bracket. The rift extended straight, tearing through layers of thick ice all the way, which was enough to show the terrifying power of that previous slash. Closing square bracket. At the end of the rift, Jozu, whose entire body was transformed into brilliant diamond, stood steadily in place. Closing square bracket. His arm muscles were tense, and his chest rose and fell slightly. He appeared unscathed, but in reality, the massive impact of clashing head-on with that supreme slash had long since caused his blood to surge. Closing square bracket. Just as everyone on the entire Duluo continent was dumbfounded and their minds trembled, golden subtitles slowly emerged on the sky canopy, the clear introduction resounding across the world. Closing square bracket. Whitebeard Pirates, 3rd Division Commander, Diamond Jozu. Fruit type, Paramesha, Diamond Fruit. Ability description, the entire physical body transforms into an ultimate diamond form. Physical defense reaches the peak. Conventional weapons, sharp slashes, and physical impacts are all ineffective. It is nearly impervious to blades and guns, and the physical body is indestructible. Closing square bracket. What a terrifying strike, it's as if it was about to split the heavens and earth. Is this the world's greatest swordsman? The power of a single strike is like this. As expected of the only level 99 existence among the Shichibukai. Are the swordsmen of our Duluo continent this powerful? Definitely not, and this Dracula Mahawk didn't even use a spirit ability, or even a spirit. He just relied on the sword in his hand. And the 3rd Division Commander, is that a joke? There's such a spirit, turning oneself into diamond. He could even withstand the slash of the world's greatest swordsman. Can anyone really injure him? Don't forget, Dracula Mahawk's strike was to measure how big the gap is between himself and Whitebeard. So, just how terrifying is Whitebeard? Did he even use his full power in that tsunami earlier? 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. Sword Duluo Chenshin's gaze was firmly glued to the moment Dracula Mahawk swung his blade on the sky canopy, his eyes filled with burning passion and longing. Invisible sword chi drifted around him involuntarily. He raised his hand to summon his spirit. With a flash of cold light, the 7-kill sword was held in his palm. He gently stroked the cold blade, as if comforting the spirit that had accompanied him through a lifetime of battles. Is this the true Tao of the sword? No need for spirit abilities, no need to rely on a spirit. Casting aside all shackles, relying only on the heart, the person, and the sword in hand, one can cleave the heavens and earth. He stood there in a daze, his mind completely immersed in that earth-shattering strike, remaining motionless for a long time. Nearby, Ning Rongrong watched Grandpa Sword's absent-minded and dazed appearance, her small face full of worry. She quietly moved to Bone Duluo's side and asked in a low, hushed voice, "Grandpa Bone, is Grandpa Sword okay? Has he been struck by this?" Even she, at her young age, knew that the strike from Dracula Mahawk on the sky canopy was grand, pure, and domineering to the extreme, a realm that Grandpa Sword could not replicate no matter what at this moment. Bone Duluo Ji Yurong looked at his dazed old friend, a complex expression flashing across his face, but he gently comforted her, "Silly girl, he's fine. He isn't discouraged, he has seen the path ahead for the Tao of the sword that he has never reached in his entire life." As his voice fell, Sword Duluo, who had been frozen for a long time, finally slowly returned to his senses. He exhaled a long breath of stagnant air from his chest. There was not a trace of dejection in his eyes, and he spoke solemnly, "That's right. I am not discouraged, I am fortunate enough to have caught a glimpse of the true peak of the Tao of the sword." Beside him, Ning Fengji was slightly stunned and couldn't help but ask softly, "Uncle Sword, is such an evaluation too exaggerated?" In his eyes, Chen Shin was already the #1 swordsman in the Duluo continent, a talent not seen in 100 years, with sword attainments that were unparalleled in the world. Why would he need to praise someone else's strike so highly? But Sword Duluo's expression was incomparably firm, his words resonant and clanging, filled with the clarity of sudden realization. "Not exaggerated at all. You don't study the sword, so you don't understand the heavens and earth within it. Others see this strike as just an earth-shattering attack, but I have bitterly practiced the Tao of the sword for several decades, and I can see it clearly. In this strike, there are no routines, no techniques. There is only his obsession, aloofness, self-confidence, and the ultimate will of the Tao of the sword from decades of practicing. He raised his eyes to gaze at the sky canopy, his eyes shining with brilliant light. Seeing it today, I finally understand. My entire life's Tao of the sword has been trapped in its layout by spirits and spirit abilities. Upon hearing this, Ning Fengji was completely silent, his eyes full of shock. He finally understood what a subversive epiphany this simple strike was for Sword Duluo, who had practiced for a lifetime. Ning Rongrong nodded as if she understood, watching Dracula Mahawk standing proudly on the sky canopy, leaving only awe in her heart. Chapter 64, Kizaru Attacks. Clear Sky Sect. A group of Clear Sky Sect elders sat in a circle, all their gazes fixed on the Hawkeye on the sky canopy, sighing endlessly. Only Tang San stared at Diamond Jozu on the sky canopy, his brows furrowed tightly, his expression full of distress. Tang Xiao saw his expression. He originally didn't want to speak, but thinking that he was, after all, Yan's bloodline, and that he usually respected him in every way, he spoke first after some thought. Little San, are you thinking about that sword strike from Hawkeye? After Tang Xiao's words fell, several elders nearby chimed in. Anyone would be shocked. That sword strike could split mountains and seas. If that were on the Duluo continent, the position of the number 1 tool spirit under heaven would likely have to be ceded to Hawkeye. Tang Xiao, however, shook his head slowly, his tone firm. How is that possible? That Hawkeye doesn't even have a spirit. He can't threaten our position at all. The Grand Elder frowned and immediately retorted. Sect Master, that is not appropriate. It is clear on the sky canopy that everyone on the pirate continent can cultivate sword techniques. If this cultivation method were introduced to Duluo, and everyone practiced swordsmanship, where would the advantage of our clear sky hammer, which our tool spirit relies on to stand, be? Wouldn't the sect's position be in jeopardy? Tang Xiao sneered, his words merciless. Grand Elder, if your eyes are failing you, you can go and rest. You. The Grand Elder was humiliated, slammed his palm onto the armrest of his chair, and stood up abruptly. The atmosphere in the hall became instantly tense. The elders on both sides held their breath, looking like they were about to quarrel. Tang Xiao's expression was indifferent, showing no intention of backing down. If practicing the Tao of the sword could reach Hawkeye's realm, why would the pirate continent need martial soul fruits? And why would they have the weakness of sea stone? It can be seen from this that this sword Tao must require someone with extremely high talent to go far. And people with such talent are few and far between. He stood up straight and looked directly at the Grand Elder, asking firmly, will this small number of people shake the position of our Clear Sky sect? Grand Elder. After the elders pondered carefully, they nodded secretly one after another, feeling that the sect master's words made sense. The Grand Elder's face turned blue and white. Although he was full of displeasure, he knew his argument didn't hold water. He let out a heavy grunt and sat down sullenly. He was a reasonable man and would not pester without reason. Seeing that he had suppressed this old fellow, Tang Xiao was in a great mood. He turned to look at Tang San, who still had a worried face, and asked with confusion, Little San, are you not worried about this? Tang San nodded heavily, his eyes still fixed on Diamond Jozu. Uncle, I am looking at this 3rd Division commander. His entire body is diamond-fied, and his physical defense is almost unsolvable. All my various hidden weapons are completely countered. Tang Xiao suddenly realized, Tang San had already handed over the complete set of Tang sect hidden weapon manufacturing methods to the sect, so the high-level members of the Clear Sky sect were all proficient in the construction and lethality of hidden weapons. He instantly understood the crux of the matter. That's right, a diamond body is the natural nemesis of all sharp hidden weapons. The hidden weapons we forge become almost completely ineffective when encountering this type of ability. Tang San was also frustrated. The Tang sect's legacy was now almost completely broken. He was truly unwilling. Tang Xiao couldn't think of a way to crack it for a moment, so he could only reach out and gently pat Tang San on the shoulder, comforting him softly. It's okay, Little San. This is just a spirit that he alone has. Maybe you won't encounter it in a lifetime. Tang San felt the warmth on his shoulder and looked at his uncle's concerned eyes, feeling a warmth in his heart. The frustration that had just lingered in his heart quietly dissipated. At this moment, he only had one thought in his heart, if only uncle were my father. Sky canopy footage plays. The aftermath of Jozu blocking Hawkeye's slash had not yet dissipated when Kizaru on the viewing stand suddenly became interested. With his hands casually inserted in his suit pockets, he spoke slowly, my. As expected of a commander of the Whitebeard pirates, they are as strong as monsters. Though his words seemed like praise, his eyes were listless and playful. That expression was full of undisguised sarcasm, without a shred of genuine admiration. He locked his gaze on Whitebeard at the bow of the ship and muttered to himself faintly, if we want to minimize losses, it seems we must capture the ringleader first. As soon as he finished speaking, dazzling golden light erupted from Kizaru's body. The whole person turned into a stream of light, instantly crossing the long battlefield and appearing abruptly in front of Whitebeard. Massive amounts of light gathered and spread around him. Dense light bullets of the Yasukani no Magatama burst forth like rain, rushing straight at Whitebeard with scorching power. Whitebeard looked up at the dazzling light in the sky, his tone carrying a bit of impatience. It's too dazzling. Brat, but he made no move. Just as the light bullets were about to land on Whitebeard, a cyan blue flame broke through the air. 1st Division Commander Marco spread his wings, and in his phoenix form, intercepted in the air between the two. The overwhelming light bullets bombarded his body one after another. Each light bullet exploded, blasting through holes in his chest, but strangely, the wounds were slowly filled and restored by the rising cyan blue flames in an instant, and not a single drop of blood fell from his entire body. Kizaru floated in midair, with fine flashes lingering on his body, and looked at the other party slowly. Blue flames, huh? Marco's body was blazing with blue flames, his expression calm and smiling. How can I let you disturb our king right from the start? The corners of Kizaru's mouth curled into a mocking arc. How terrifying. Mythical zone. As the words fell, the blue flames flowing on Marco's body slowly converged. The body that had just been pierced by the light bullets was already intact, without a trace of a scar. His eyes suddenly burst with sharp light, and flames surged all over his body, turning into a giant, luxurious, and noble phoenix with wings covered in cyan blue flames, flapping its wings and pouncing fiercely toward Kizaru. Kizaru didn't care, and once again used the Yasukani no Magatama. Dense light bullets poured down continuously, all smashing onto the giant bird's body. But even though the light bullets constantly pierced its wings and body, the wounds still healed in an instant under the nourishment of the blue flames, making it impossible to cause effective heavy damage. In an instant, Marco arrived in front of Kizaru. His figure was half human, his right leg glowing with a pitch-black luster, and he whipped it out with great force. With a loud bang, Kizaru's body, which was condensed from light elements, was kicked. He flew backward like a kite with a broken string, smashing through multiple building ruins along the coast, passing through broken walls and ruined tiles, and fell wolfishly to the ground. Then, with a flash of light, Kizaru appeared again, his clothes slightly dirty, and he said calmly, "It seems it's not that simple to go straight for the head." Sky Canopy text appears. Whitebeard Pirates 1st Division Commander and Ship Doctor, Phoenix Marco. Bounty, 1.374 billion berries. Consumed a mythical zone fruit, awakened the Phoenix spirit. Covered in cyan blue flames, any wounds caused by attacks will be instantly repaired by the flames. The physical body is shattered but not destroyed, and not a drop of blood flows. And the flames of regeneration can be used to heal companions, accelerating wound healing. The people under the Sky Canopy were speechless for a moment. Is this the power of a light spirit? The speed is almost imperceptible, and the light bullets are powerful. It simply has no weaknesses. This reminds me of Minato Namikaze from the Naruto continent. He is also like a golden flash, but he uses teleportation, while Kizaru has the speed of light. Chapter 65. Is the pirate continent not monitored by the god realm? But that Kizaru's expression is so annoying. Is it just my imagination? No, I think so too. He talks like everyone is a monster, but his expression is extremely mocking. And that Marco, another mythical zone spirit, a phoenix, I've never heard of it. This is too overpowered. It's like a joke. As long as the flames are there, he won't get hurt. Who can defeat him? And have you noticed that Marco is actually able to attack Kizaru? Isn't he a nature-type spirit? He turned into light. How did he do it? It's that black luster on his legs that gave him the ability to hit a nature type. I knew it. A nature type can't be that invincible. There must be a way to hurt him. And is this bounty a joke? 1.374 billion. Although I don't know what a berry is. But that's too exaggerated. Spirit Hall, Elder Hall. A group of elders gathered at the foot of the stairs, their eyes still fixed on the images remaining on the Sky Canopy. Lion Duluo turned his head to look at Qian Dalyu in front and asked, "Big brother, if it were you, could you unleash that offensive attack where Kizaru turns into golden light and shoots across the sky?" Qian Dalyu slowly withdrew his gaze from the Sky Canopy, closed his eyes and pondered for a moment, then slowly shook his head. "I cannot. The angel martial soul invokes holy light, but ultimately requires the spirit as a medium, using the bloodline and spirit to communicate with the origin. But Kizaru's true form is light, he himself is the source of power. His ability is naturally gifted, far purer than the angel's light. The essence of the two is completely different." Beside him, Gold Crocodile Duluo sighed heavily, full of emotion. The pirate continent has only revealed a few kinds of spirits so far, yet they have broken our inherent understanding one after another. Infinite light bullets pouring out, instantly turning into light to attack. His offense, defense, and speed are all approaching perfection. And Marco's Phoenix, possessing the talent for near-infinite self-healing, if it were a spirit in the Duluo continent, it would definitely be a top-tier super beast spirit. Several elders around nodded in deep agreement. Qian Dalyu shook his head again, his tone becoming more solemn. It is far more than just a super spirit. Setting aside the nature type for a moment, the Phoenix alone is already a genuine divine rank spirit. The giant bird's aura is noble and carries the divine fire of rebirth. It belongs to the ancient divine beast class and cannot be mentioned in the same breath as ordinary beast spirits. The eyes of the elders widened, and demon-subduing Duluo hurriedly took a half step forward, asking urgently, "Big brother, does this mean your seraphim spirit would belong to the mythical zone category if it were in that world?" "Correct." Qian Dalyu nodded slightly. The fact that the mythical zone can be classified separately is enough to show that the One Piece world has long since discovered that the abilities of this kind of divine beast bloodline are far superior to ordinary zone types. Gold Crocodile Duluo frowned suddenly, looking disappointed. "In that case, wouldn't my Golden Crocodile King spirit only count as the most ordinary zone type over there?" The Golden Crocodile King was the foundation of his existence. Being suddenly relegated to the ordinary ranks made him feel inevitably depressed. Qian Dalyu comforted him. "That's impossible. The Golden Crocodile King inherits an ancient bloodline, and its physique is far stronger than ordinary spirit beasts. Even in the One Piece system, it could be classified as an ancient species and is also a powerful spirit." Light Feather Duluo's eyes lit up, and he said with feeling, "After this comparison on the Sky Canopy, our past classification of spirits is too crude. We only roughly divide them into trash spirits and super spirits, which is too general. In my opinion, our spirit hall should refer to the One Piece fruit classification and redefine a brand new spirit ranking system." The remaining elders followed suit, agreeing to revise the classification system. Qian Dalyu thought for a moment and said lightly, "After the Sky Canopy concludes, leave this matter to Yuji to lead the preparations. That kid is quick-witted. Didn't he also propose the concept of an ultimate spirit? Stardo Great Forest." The five vicious beasts gathered together, the sky blocked by the shade of trees, and the leaders of the spirit beasts kept their eyes firmly locked on the Sky Canopy above. Baiji had always been proficient in healing and restoration. Among the spirit beasts of Stardo, she considered herself second to none in terms of self-healing talent. But watching the Phoenix spirit on the Sky Canopy, where Marco's body was pierced by light bullets, his wounds repaired by blue flames in an instant, and his injuries fully recovered in the blink of an eye, the usually calm Baiji could not help but be stunned. The life talent she had always prided herself on was severely shaken. She turned her head to look at N.A.N, who had a solemn face beside her, and asked softly, "N.A.N, what kind of beast is this? According to common knowledge in the world, spirits can all be found in the real world, but I have never seen this kind of creature." DTN said in a deep voice, I don't know, it's very unfamiliar. At first, the Kai Wang, Xiangjun and the other vicious beasts didn't care. The giant sea kings that appeared on the sky canopy earlier were unrecognizable even to DTN, who had lived for endless years. They assumed this phoenix must just be a unique beast from another continent. But seeing DTN frowning and his expression becoming increasingly serious, the hearts of the vicious beasts slowly tightened. Kai Wang couldn't suppress the doubt in his heart and asked, DTN, could it be that there's something tricky about this creature? DTN's eyes were fixed on the phoenix surrounded by blue divine flames, his tone heavy, this is an unfamiliar divine beast. In the Dragon God era, all spirits stood together. Although divine beasts were dominated by the Dragon clan, there also existed top-tier ancient divine beasts like the phoenix and N.A.N. Facing the surprised gazes of the vicious beasts, DTN continued to analyze the key point. The key is that I know every divine beast that appeared in the Dragon God era. After the Dragon God fell, spirit beasts could not become gods. For a divine beast that I have never heard of to appear out of thin air, the implication is self-evident. The forest instantly fell into dead silence, and even the wind seemed to have stopped. After a while, the impatient Xiangjun's chest heaved violently, and his heavy breathing broke the silence. Could it be, the beasts of the pirate continent can become gods? As soon as the words fell, all the vicious beasts focused their eyes on DTN, waiting anxiously for an answer. DTN nodded slowly, enunciating every word, it is very possible. In an instant, the hearts of Kai Wang, Bai Ji, Xiangjun, and the other vicious beasts were stirred with monstrous waves. The frustration of lurking for countless years and being held back by the God Realm's heavenly tribulation surged at this moment, and none of them could hide their excitement. The steady Wan Yao Wang on the side forcibly suppressed his agitation and said calmly, could it be that the pirate continent is isolated from the world, so it didn't appear during the Dragon God period, which is why we don't know about it? These words were like a basin of cold water poured onto the hearts of the beasts, and the ecstasy that had just risen instantly dissipated for the most part. DTN, however, shook his head slowly, a gleam of light appearing in his eyes. If that is really the case, it is an even greater opportunity. To be able to live in seclusion under the nose of the Dragon God, I am afraid that hiding it from the God Realm is also no problem. Then, the pirate continent is very likely not subject to the rules of the God Realm. That is to say, in the pirate continent, there is no lightning tribulation, and there are no shackles from the God Realm targeting spirit beasts. Many vicious beasts felt their hearts burn even hotter upon hearing this guess. Chapter 66, Akainu, Great Eruption. The war on the sky canopy reignited. Just as Marco pursued Kizaru into the distance, Diamond Jozu locked his gaze on Akainu, who was holding down the main formation. He bent down, grabbed a giant chunk of ice from the battlefield that was the size of a hill, his body gleaming with diamond luster, and with a thunderous roar, he hurled it with all his might. The frozen hill whistled through the air, heading straight for Akainu. If you've got the guts, block this. Akainu, who had been sitting on the admiral's chair, saw the iceberg looming over him. He slowly stood up, looking impatient. Good grief. Those two went off to fight on their own, neglecting their duties. If we all leave, who will guard the execution platform? Before he finished speaking, Akainu clenched his right fist. Dark smoke billowed out, and his entire arm instantly transformed into scorching molten lava, the intense heat warping the surrounding air. The lava gathered in layers, forming a massive, fiery rock fist. Akainu shouted in a deep, sharp voice, Great Eruption. The scorching magma fist collided explosively with the iceberg. A deafening roar shook the bay. The mountain made of ice crumbled instantly, bit by bit, as ice shards and heat waves scattered in all directions. The force of the attack did not diminish. The shattered lava split into a dense rain of smaller magma fists, pouring down from the sky and smashing into the lines of the Whitebeard pirates. The weaker pirates at the bottom were unable to dodge in time. Upon being struck by the scorching magma, their flesh charred instantly. Screams rang out one after another, and the battlefield was left in shambles with severed limbs flying everywhere. One of the lava fists, still carrying residual force, broke through layers of obstruction and hurtled straight toward Whitebeard at the bow of the Moby Dick. Whitebeard remained calm and relaxed, showing no signs of using his trembling power. He gripped his Murakumogiri with one hand and blocked the attack with a light swing. With a resounding clang, the scorching lava slammed into the blade, and its violent fire energy was steadily neutralized by the long sword. Then, a playful smirk appeared on Whitebeard's lips. He blew a gentle breath at the crimson lava clinging to the blade. An astonishing scene unfolded. The scorching red magma rapidly cooled and solidified, instantly turning into lumps of pitch black, porous volcanic rock. He looked up into the distance at the cold-faced Akainu, his voice filled with heavy mockery. If you're going to throw fire around so casually, you might as well use it to light the candles on a birthday cake, you magma brat. Standing at the edge of the execution platform, Akainu mocked Whitebeard on the giant ship in the sea. Don't you like luxurious funerals? Whitebeard. Jozu has such immense strength. How is that any different from throwing a mountain? Could it be that this diamond fruit also increases physical strength? And Akainu, is this the power of magma? That Akainu feels so cold and ruthless. That's not the power of magma. That's clearly the power of a volcano. It's simply a natural disaster. All three admirals have made their moves. This level of strength is truly worthy of being level 99. I just don't know which of these three admirals is stronger. Shrek Academy. The scene of Akainu's great eruption shattering the giant ice and the magma raining down firmly captured Ma Hongjun's attention. His eyes were full of envy, and he couldn't help but mutter to himself, such powerful strength. If only my spirit could turn into this kind of magma spirit. The others were speechless upon hearing this. Daimubai stepped forward and lightly patted Ma Hongjun's forehead, retorting, Fatty, are you daydreaming? Who in the world wouldn't covet such a top-tier spirit? Yeah, Fatty, that magma is like a natural disaster. You're too daring with your thoughts, Oscar said disdainfully. As the students joked and played around, Flender glanced over casually and stopped paying attention. He turned to Yu Shaogang beside him and asked, Shaogang, based on your judgment, will the Navy win this great battle in the end, or will the Whitebeard pirates take the execution platform? Yu Shaogang looked confident, his tone firm. The final winner will undoubtedly be the Navy. Oscar immediately raised his hand in confusion, but Grandmaster, Whitebeard was able to raise a monstrous tsunami with just a wave of his hand earlier. How could such terrifying power lose? Yu Shaogang gave a light snort and analyzed methodically. If you carefully recall the entire battle, from the start until now, Whitebeard has only used his full strength once, when he raised the tsunami. His subsequent attacks have all been reserved, clearly showing his advanced age and inability to sustain his stamina. The initial tsunami might have even been an intentional show of force to intimidate the Navy. In contrast, the 3 Navy admirals are in their prime and full of energy. They only need to wear them down with a protracted battle. The Whitebeard pirates cannot afford that. Everyone carefully reviewed the details of the battle played on the sky canopy and found that it was indeed as Yu Shaogang said. Whitebeard mostly relied on his commanders to fight, rarely making a move himself, and they all suddenly realized. Zhao Wuji and the others also looked at Yu Shaogang with complex expressions, not expecting him to actually have substance. Receiving admiring gazes from the students and elders, Yu Shaogang felt pleased, his back straightening unconsciously. He continued with conviction, the crux of the entire battle now lies with Whitebeard. As long as the Navy takes him down first, the Whitebeard pirates' morale will crumble, and this Marineford war will end immediately. Ma Hongjun temporarily set aside his thoughts about the magma fruit and scratched his head, asking, but Whitebeard can block an admiral's move with just a casual gesture. How could it be easy to capture him alive? Yu Shaogang smiled faintly. The Navy holds a complete formation, massive military forces, and a host of vice admirals and shichibukai to keep the commanders occupied. Under a slow encirclement, it is only a matter of time before Whitebeard, isolated and without support, is defeated. The battlefield on the sky canopy was filled with smoke. Row upon row of naval cannons, as thick as water vats, roared one after another, and dense cannonballs engulfed in fire rained down on the Whitebeard pirates' fleet. Under the relentless barrage of artillery fire, the originally massive pirate ships under Whitebeard's command were blown to pieces and sank one after another. Now, only 3 main ships remained, barely floating on the frozen sea. The weaker pirates at the bottom were unable to dodge and continued to be injured and wail amidst the artillery fire. With no other choice, the commanders of the various divisions all stepped away to personally block the cannonballs filling the sky. Whitebeard raised his hand and shattered the air, creating black fissures. The wide-range vibration power spread out, causing a large number of cannonballs to explode and disintegrate in the air. Josu's body flashed with diamond luster as he stood tall and rammed into the remaining cannonballs, the explosion's fire leaving not a single scratch on him. Vista's long swords danced and fluttered, his exquisite sword chi crisscrossing, slicing all incoming cannonballs into fragments. With the commanders' all-out efforts to block, the pouring artillery fire instantly diminished. The pirate army seized the gap and charged forward with all their might, stepping on the ice sheet. Various abilities were displayed in turn. A burly man filled with murderous aura held a flaming long sword, slashing through a sea of fire, cutting down all the Navy soldiers who blocked his path. A bloated pirate pulled a massive wooden hammer from his neck, swinging it in a sweep, and the oncoming Navy soldiers were smashed into a bloody pulp one after another. The Navy camp also dispatched powerhouses. Several giant vice admirals stepped forward, wielding giant axes to split mountains, charging directly at Vista to hack and kill. Forced by the brute strength of the giants, Vista, who had been calmly slicing through cannonballs, had to turn his sword edge to passive defense. He had no time to attend to the artillery fire filling the sky, and the Navy's cannons roared wildly again. Countless cannonballs poured down once more, and the entire Marineford battlefield plunged into chaotic melee. Chapter 67, The King of Deserters, Kobe. Amidst the chaotic slaughter, 2 soldiers who looked like new recruits stood out, completely out of place with the warriors bleeding and fighting around them. The pink-haired recruit was soaked in cold sweat, his legs trembling uncontrollably. Watching the clashes of powerful fighters before him that could easily destroy mountains and split the earth, his eyes were filled with terror and loss of focus. The blonde marine behind him even felt his legs go weak, kneeling directly onto the ice, his face pale as he muttered to himself, "Impossible, we can't win against these people at all." The blonde marine turned his head abruptly and roared at his still hesitant pink-haired companion, "You're thinking the same thing, right? Everyone on this field is a monster. This isn't a battlefield that rookies like us can get involved in. Let's run." Seeing the pink-haired youth still hesitating, the blonde recruit scrambled to his feet, urging him anxiously, "Are you an idiot? We won't last even a second if we stay on this battlefield. Don't you aspire to become a marine admiral? Staying here will only mean throwing your life away for nothing." The pink-haired youth clenched his fists. The ideals in his heart and the urge to survive were locked in a tug of war, and his feet subconsciously shifted back half a step. The whole world was silent. Everyone watched the brutal battlefield on the sky canopy, strewn with corpses and crisscrossed with artillery fire, feeling a heavy weight in their hearts. It's too brutal. This is what real war is like. Death is happening at any time and any place. There's no other way. This is war. And it's a war where everyone can cultivate. The spirits of this Whitebeard pirates are really bizarre. I saw it too. Is there some kind of space on that guy's chin? He pulled out such a huge wooden hammer. Many people's gazes fell back onto the 2 wavering marine recruits in the corner, and the discussion started again. But why is the sky canopy showing 2 deserters? Yeah, look at how cowardly they are. Everyone else is fighting, but they're the only ones afraid of death, right? Heaven-Do Empire, Heaven-Do City. Marshal Zhe Long stared fixedly at the thick, sturdy artillery barrels on the marine positions, his eyes shining with intense light, and he stepped forward to offer advice to Emperor Shuiyi with a bow. Your Majesty, this kind of tubular weapon might just be the opportunity for Heaven-Do to rise. It requires absolutely no activation of spirit power, yet its power is extremely formidable. If the entire nation were to cast and equip them in large numbers, it would be enough to suppress the Star Luo Empire and even contend with Spirit Hall. Emperor Shuiyi had already noticed the power of the artillery, and his heart was already stirred. He saw further than Zhe Long. The reason Spirit Hall could keep the 2 great empires breathless was because most of the low-level spirit masters on the continent were attached to their command. And this kind of artillery that required no spirit power could exactly bridge the gap in combat power brought about by spirit masters. He was about to issue an edict, but N.A.N, who was beside him, stepped forward and spoke up to stop him. "Father, you absolutely cannot do this. Once this thing is popularized, it will shake the empire's foundation." Emperor Shuiyi frowned slightly. He originally wanted to reprimand her, but seeing the crown prince's solemn expression and knowing that she never spoke without purpose, he suppressed his words and waited for what she had to say. N.A.N calmly explained, Father, that artillery has peerless power. Top-tier spirit masters naturally have nothing to fear, but low-level spirit masters and ordinary nobles would be completely suppressed. Once commoners can also hold such killing weapons, the order of the past will collapse, and countless riots will inevitably break out within the country. Her words woke him from his dream. The image of chaos springing up instantly appeared in Emperor Shui's mind. As for why he was so certain that the commoners would riot, it was because he had great confidence in the nobles under his rule. They wouldn't do a single thing that was actually helpful. If it weren't for the suppression by spirit masters, the empire would have to exhaust countless amounts of energy just to clean up their messes. Seeing this, Zhe Long hurriedly stepped forward to argue. Crown Prince's words make sense, but the current situation is critical. The sky canopy has descended, and Spirit Hall was the biggest winner in the last instance. Your subject has heard that now, as long as one can sign some sort of loyalty contract with Spirit Hall, one can practice ninjutsu. Spirit masters across the entire continent are flocking to Spirit Hall. This artillery is the only way to alleviate this. We cannot give it up because of temporary turmoil. Both sides had their points, and Emperor Shui was in a dilemma. He turned to look at Qian Runshui. Does the Crown Prince have a strategy that satisfies both sides? Qian Runshui's eyes flickered slightly. She already had a plan in mind. She was an undercover agent. She absolutely could not let Heaven Do master such a weapon of mass destruction. At the same time, she had calculated that Shui had always secretly competed with the Star Luo Emperor, so she calmly proposed, Father might as well wait and see first, look at how the Star Luo Empire decides, and it won't be too late for us to make a decision then. Emperor Shui's eyes lit up, and he nodded repeatedly. That is very sound advice. Then we shall hold our ground for now and watch. Zhe Long still wanted to continue to remonstrate, but Emperor Shui deliberately changed the subject. Marshal, speaking of the hearts of those on the battlefield, has such a deserter ever appeared in my Heaven Do army as seen in the sky canopy? Zhe Long was immediately sidetracked, understanding that His Majesty did not want to discuss the artillery matter anymore. He sighed helplessly and replied seriously, Your Majesty, our Heaven Do military discipline is strict, and those who desert in the face of battle are all dealt with according to military law. As for those two Marine recruits, in my opinion, they are destined to never achieve anything great. He came from a military background and looked down on such deserter behavior entirely. Oh, Marshal Zhe Long has a strong opinion about these two, Emperor Shui said. Marshal Zhe Long snorted coldly, especially that pink-haired Marine, he still wants to become a Marine Admiral. What a joke, would an Admiral ever want a deserter? Emperor Shui followed by shaking his head slowly and lamented, if he really becomes a Marine Admiral, I truly dare not imagine how degenerate the Marines will have become by then. ... Clear Sky Sect. In the meeting hall, everyone's eyes were fixed on the battlefield in the sky. When the scene of rows of heavy artillery barrels roaring and shells breaking through the air came into view, Tang San's pupils suddenly constricted. He froze in place, his heart surging with stormy waves. How is this possible? Why would other continents have discovered gunpowder? Gunpowder was his trump card. In the hidden weapons manual he gave to the Clear Sky Sect, he had deleted the top 10 ranked hidden weapons. The Buddha's Fury Tang Lotus was even more firmly sealed away by him. He originally thought that this power derived from gunpowder was a secret reliance that belonged solely to him. He never expected that the pirate continent would actually also possess this thing. As his emotion surged, Tang Xiao beside him noticed his unusual expression and asked, Little San, your complexion is off. Did something happen? The gazes of all the elders in the hall converged on him. Tang San's heart tightened, and he quickly suppressed the shock and unease in his heart, putting on an appearance of righteous indignation, and replied with a bow, Uncle, I just can't stand those two Marines who deserted in the face of battle. As soldiers, they betrayed their honor, it is truly despicable. Once these words were spoken, no one thought much of it, simply because ever since Tang San entered the Clear Sky Sect, he had always kept the honor of the Clear Sky Sect on his lips. It was as if he had grown up here since he was little. Tang Xiao walked up with a smile, raised his hand to pat his shoulder, his tone carrying a bit of helplessness and persuasion. You child, you just take this so-called honor too seriously. He was very satisfied with Tang San's character, it was only this one point, he always talked about honor. Back then, when the Clear Sky Sect was forced to seal the mountain and live in seclusion, the entire sect endured humiliation and carried the burden. If everyone regarded honor as the sole basis for their existence, they would likely have reached a dead end long ago. Listening to his uncle's words, Tang San's expression instantly became complex. His underlying programming kicked in. He both wanted to refute his uncle, that honor is the foundation of everything, and because Tang Xiao was his elder and sect master, he dared not speak out. After struggling several times, he opened his mouth, but the words were stuck in his throat. He stammered for a long time, but in the end, he couldn't say a single word. Chapter 68. The appearance of Little Ors Jr., the Vicious Empress. The din of the battlefield had not yet ceased when a series of thunderous footsteps suddenly echoed. Thump, thump, thump. The sound grew closer, heavy and earth-shaking. Even submerged in the roar of cannon fire and war cries, it remained clear and piercing. Every Marine turned their head in unison, their gazes locked on the billowing smoke and mist ahead. The pirates under Whitebeard were reinvigorated, their faces filled with ecstasy. Before long, a gargantuan shadow that blotted out the sky stepped out of the mist. Little Ors Jr. appeared on the battlefield. With a green face and sharp fangs, his body was several times larger than the Marines, giant vice admirals. With every step he took, the frozen ground cracked into spiderweb patterns. He had a clear objective, to charge straight toward the execution platform. Incoming cannonballs rained down, exploding upon his massive frame, yet Little Ors Jr. didn't dodge or evade. His hide was so tough that not even a single scratch was left. However, the incessant bombardment irritated him. He immediately raised the giant long sword in his hand and swung it down with all his might. A deafening roar shook the bay. A massive Marine warship was sliced clean in two, the wreckage slowly capsizing into the sea. The pirate camp erupted in cheers. Ace! Little Ors Jr. roared, the sound wave sweeping across the entire field, I am coming to save you. He continued to charge with heavy strides. A giant vice admiral, over 20 meters tall, broke out in a cold sweat. Compared to Little Ors Jr., he was like a child's toy, but he still upheld his duty as a soldier. Blocking the path with his sword, he shouted in a deep voice, "I will never let you take another step forward." Little Ors Jr. didn't even look at him, swinging his sword several times in succession. The giant vice admiral retreated repeatedly, his long sword shattering inch by inch, and in an instant, he was beheaded by a single strike, his body crashing to the ground. On the bow of the Moby Dick, Whitebeard looked at this reckless figure and shook his head with a helpless sigh. Little Ors Jr., charging blindly without regard for anything is not the same as being a true warrior. He knew that although Little Ors Jr. had a formidable physique, he could not contend with the Shichibukai and the top-tier powerhouses. A prolonged battle would inevitably lead to a dangerous situation. "Pops, I just want to save Ace quickly, don't stop me." Little Ors Jr. shouted back, his footsteps never pausing. Whitebeard had no choice but to turn and give the order, "Everyone, advance and provide cover. Back up Little Ors Jr." The pirates followed closely behind the giant, advancing. The giant vice admirals blocking their path were cut down one after another, and the pirate front line pushed forward, charging straight to the defensive line held by the Shichibukai. The sky canopy suddenly displayed gilded characters, introducing information about Little Ors Jr. Little Ors Jr. Ancient giant race, descendant of the demon Ors, the continent puller, captain of the Ors pirates under Whitebeard. Height, 38 meters. Bounty, 550 million berries. Beneath the sky canopy, everyone on the Duluo continent stared at Little Ors Jr. in the screen, dumbfounded. Hiss, what is this thing? Can this even be considered human? The demon race, a descendant of Ors the continent puller. Could his ancestors be even larger, capable of hauling a country around? So strong, the giants are like toys in front of him. How will the Marines deal with him? I feel like his physical attributes alone exceed those of a titled Duluo. I'll say it again, is he really not a beast? A bounty of 550 million berries, is the currency of the pirate continent actually money? The sky canopy continued to play. A pirate, seeing that everyone's attention was drawn by Little Ors Jr., thought he saw an opportunity, raised his hand, and fired several shots at Hancock. Hancock looked on with disdain. With an elegant posture, she raised her hand and lightly kissed her fingertip, and a huge pink heart instantly appeared in midair. With a gentle tug of her delicate hand, hundreds of pink arrow rays shot out from the heart. Captive arrow. The pink arrows streaked across, striking the bullets and the nearby pirates. The crowd beneath the sky canopy was full of confusion when the sudden change occurred. The bullets that were hit solidified into stone, and the pirates who were struck became stiff all over, turning into cold stone statues in the blink of an eye. Some pirates gasped in surprise, recognizing her identity. "It's you. The Pirate Empress." Hancock paid no heed, leaping into the fray. Her legs moved as fast as afterimages, sweeping out in continuous kicks toward the surrounding crowd. Whether Marine or pirate, anyone she kicked or touched would crumble into gravel. A Marine, both angry and confused, shouted, "Why are you attacking the Marines too?" Hancock raised her chin haughtily, her tone cold and arrogant. "Although I agreed to join forces against Whitebeard, it does not mean I am your ally. To me, all men in the world are the same, friend or foe." Beneath the firmament, discussions rose and fell. Everyone looked at Hancock on the screen, their faces a mix of confusion and awe. "She's too beautiful, just looking at her for a second makes me feel intoxicated. She truly deserves to be recognized as the #1 beauty of the pirate continent." "She is indeed beautiful, but what is going on with that attack? Everything she touches turns to stone. That's too unsolvable. Not only is she good at close quarters combat, but she also has long-range moves like the captive arrow. She's prepared for both close and long range, and there's no way to guard against her. But her personality is too vicious. She doesn't distinguish between friend and foe. Yeah, and saying that all men in the world are the same. That's too much. I'm a good man." Among the crowd, some women chimed in. "I actually think the Empress is right. Aren't all men like that?" There were even many men completely captivated by the Empress's beauty, their eyes dull as they murmured in agreement, "Whatever the Empress says is right." Spirit Hall, Supreme Pontiff Palace. The hall was silent. Bibi Dong's gaze fell on the Empress in the sky canopy. She turned her head to look at Yu Ji beside her, her tone carrying a hint of playfulness. "Xiao Ji, she is very beautiful, isn't she?" Yu Ji knew exactly what this woman meant. He quickly retracted his gaze from the sky canopy and looked at Bibi Dong with a steady expression, his tone sincere. "Teacher, her appearance is indeed outstanding, but her temperament is perverse and overbearing. In terms of looks, you are not a whit inferior to her, and your personality is far superior to hers. Your strength is also far greater than hers. There is simply no comparison between the two of you." Regarding personality, Yu Ji admitted he told a little white lie. He felt that the blackened Bibi Dong was about the same as the Empress, perhaps even worse. Bibi Dong was a love brain and a paranoid, while the Empress was a love brain with a vicious personality. This statement happened to hit the mark for Bibi Dong. She nodded slowly, her expression turning solemn as she continued to ask, "Is her ability really that exaggerated? Anyone who falls for her will turn to stone." According to the information from the sky canopy, that is indeed the case. Yu Ji answered seriously, "This ability is very tricky. Only those with a will as firm as rock, unmoved by beauty, can completely ignore it. But there is also that strange kicking technique, it hits you whether you fall for her or not." Bibi Dong frowned slightly and sighed. The martial soul fruit of this pirate continent is truly bizarre. Yu Ji nodded in deep agreement. Who could say otherwise? Many of the abilities were simply ridiculous. Even Luffy's fruit was the most ridiculous ability of all. Chapter 69, The Death of Little Ors Jr. On the other side of the battlefield, Little Ors Jr. had already charged to the front of the Shichibukai. As the others were about to make their move, Bartholomew Kuma stepped forward first, raising his arms with palms facing each other, as two forces continuously compressed and gathered between them. Light and shadow intertwined as a giant, deceptively cute paw print slowly took shape, its size rapidly ballooning until it matched Little Ors Jr.'s stature. The moment Little Ors Jr. reached close range, the massive paw print suddenly contracted, shrinking to the size of a palm in an instant. Kuma raised his hand and pushed the compressed power forward, his tone flat, Ursus shock. The small mark drifted leisurely toward Little Ors Jr., and the moment it made impact, a blinding light erupted, with violent shockwaves crazily rippling and spreading from within his body. A gale swept across the entire battlefield, weaker marines and pirates were blown away instantly, with only the admirals and the Shichibukai able to ignore it. When the light slowly dissipated, the massive Little Oars Jr. was covered in blood. Unable to hold on any longer, he fell heavily to one knee, his heavy panting echoing incessantly, stripped of his previous unstoppable momentum. Beneath the sky canopy, spectators across the entire continent were stunned, staring fixedly at the scene on the battlefield as discussions erupted one after another. What kind of attack is that? Ursa's shock. That is too terrifying. Even 100,000-year spirit ability would not be much more than this. I thought no one could stand against Little Oars Jr. before, and yet, a single Shichibukai took him down. But fortunately, the attack speed was too slow. Little Oars Jr. only got hit because he is too big, we could easily dodge it. Do you think Kuma has any faster skills? So, is Little Oars Jr. dead? Judging by the situation, even if he is not dead, he is heavily injured. Just as everyone concluded that Little Oars Jr. was on the verge of death, a thick left hand slowly reached out through the smoke, its 5 fingers straining forward, persistently reaching toward the execution platform. Is it still not enough to reach? A low, raspy voice came from the smoke. Leveraging the strength of his arm, Little Oars Jr. barely managed to prop himself up, his heavy, ragged breathing audible. Tottering, he struggled to stand up once more. The sky canopy image shifted abruptly, cutting to a flashback from the past. Bright sunlight spilled onto the sea, the sun scorching hot. Ace stood beside Little Oars Jr., looking up at the mountain-like giant before him, and smiled as he held up a massive straw hat. Little Oars Jr., with the sun this vicious, do you not feel hot? This is a craft I learned in Wano country, try wearing this. The surrounding pirate crew members teased and jeered. Ace, you have already ruined 2 straw hats making these. You are literally fire, yet you insist on weaving straw hats. Little Oars Jr. did not mind the others' jokes at all, carefully taking the straw hat and placing it steadily on his head, a simple, honest smile on his face. It is much cooler now. He looked down at Ace at his feet, his eyes filled with sincere gratitude. The gentle Ace of the past gradually overlapped with the battered figure currently imprisoned on the execution platform. The warmth of the past turned into biting anxiety, jolting Little Oars Jr.'s spirit and making his will incredibly firm once again. However, the firepower around the execution platform was more than 10 times fiercer than in other areas of the battlefield. The cannons were incredibly thick, almost comparable to Little Oars Jr.'s arms, and were densely aimed at the lone, charging demon. The roar of artillery was incessant, and a rain of shells fell, covering the sky. Already covered in wounds, Little Oars Jr. swayed violently with every step he took, his form stumbling as if he might topple over at any moment. The surrounding pirates watched anxiously, shouting repeatedly, Little Oars Jr., come back. Staying there will only make you a living target. Ace on the execution platform watched his best friend charging forward regardless of his own life, his eyes turning red, and he roared with all his might, Little Oars Jr. Run, do not come over. Little Oars Jr. turned a deaf ear to this, his footsteps still inching forward. At this moment, the sky canopy image shifted again, and another memory slowly unfolded. Torrential rain poured down, blurring the world. The crew members held umbrellas, watching the giant figure standing in the wind and rain, and said helplessly, Captain, why did you come outside again? Little Oars Jr., with the straw hat on his head, let the rain wash over him, smiling like a pure child. With this blocking it, I am not afraid of the rain, this thing is really great. As the memory ended, the light in Little Oars Jr.'s eyes grew increasingly stubborn. At least, I must take down one of the Shichibukai. Beneath the sky canopy, everyone was immersed in this emotion. What a touching friendship. He is doing this to save a friend. Ace is really so gentle in his eyes. Just a single straw hat, and he won the heart of a demon. A hat, and he is paying with his life. How pitiful, Little Oars Jr. Why does it feel like pirates also have such strong bonds? There is no helping it, he is too big, and in the end, he is just a living target. It seems Little Oars Jr. knows he cannot hold on, but I wonder if he can take out one of the Shichibukai. The sky canopy continued to play. Little Oars Jr. gritted his teeth, gathering all his remaining strength, his massive fist wrapped in a gale as he smashed it fiercely toward Doflamingo. Doflamingo let out a contemptuous snort, looking up at the giant fist falling from above. With a thunderous boom that shook the heavens and earth. The solid stone wall in front of the execution platform was smashed into pieces by the giant fist, with debris flying everywhere. Little Oars Jr. steadied himself, about to press the attack, but suddenly sensed something strange around him. Looking up, he saw that Doflamingo had actually stepped on invisible threads and appeared silently above his head. Ha ha ha, demon, how do you feel now? My leg. Little Oars Jr. looked dazed. The sky canopy flashed again, and a brief scene emerged. Snow covered the sea, the winter cold was biting, and Little Oars Jr. was still standing in the wind and snow, wearing that straw hat. Even the heavy snow cannot bury me, it is not cold at all. This thing is really great. He looked up and laughed, thank you, Ace. The screen cut back to the intense battle scene. A cold light flashed, and one of Little Oars Jr.'s giant legs was neatly severed by sharp threads, the severed limb flying into the air. Doflamingo landed leisurely, standing on the ice, his arrogant laughter resounding across the battlefield. Ha 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 ha, what an interesting fellow. And Moria, who was also one of the Shichibukai, said angrily, damn it. Doflamingo, how dare you destroy his body? Under successive heavy blows, Little Oars Jr.'s condition plummeted to the bottom. Blood flowed profusely from the wound, and his massive body could no longer support itself, falling heavily to the ground, his eyes rolling back, his life force fading bit by bit, as if he would collapse completely at any moment. Little Oars Jr., Ace screamed heart-wrenchingly, his voice filled with panic and anxiety. This cry was like the final spark, reigniting Little Oars Jr.'s fading consciousness. His vision was blurred, the outline of the execution platform visible only as a hazy shadow, yet he refused to give up. Supporting himself on the cold ice with his right hand, he slowly raised his left hand, using his last ounce of strength to inch toward the execution platform. Ace, just a little bit more. I am coming to save you. He murmured repeatedly, his voice weak yet persistent. Just a little bit more. Chapter 70, Yu Shaogang, there is no useless spirit. Just at this moment, Gecko Moria shouted, Shadow Master. The shadows transformed into a sky full of pitch-black bats, circling and rising into the air. Countless shadow bats rapidly intertwined and condensed in the sky, instantly forming a giant, pitch-black spear. In an instant, the sharp spear tip fiercely pierced through Little Oars Jr.'s abdomen, and without losing momentum, it went straight through his body and shot toward the sky. Ha ha ha, let's end you here. Gecko Moria looked up and laughed wildly, his expression arrogant and sinister. Little Oars Jr.'s massive body trembled violently, and the last glimmer of light in his eyes was completely extinguished. He was on the verge of death, faint and broken murmurs spilling from his throat, chanting the name he longed for over and over again. Ace, Ace. His giant hand, which had been stretching forward with all his might, only a hair's breadth away from Ace on the execution platform, suddenly paused, then fell heavily, crashing beside the execution platform. Ace on the execution platform had his pupils shrink, his whole body trembling violently, and he let out a heart-wrenching shout. Little Oars Jr. But there was no response. The entire battlefield fell into a brief, dead silence. Under the sky canopy, everyone stared blankly at the sky canopy. Did Little Oars Jr. just die like that? There was no other way, he only had the advantage of size, he couldn't reach the level of the Shichibukai. Did he fail after all? Those two Shichibukai are so cruel. Once these words were spoken, they gained the agreement of others, but at the same time, some rebutted. This is war, you talk to me about cruelty. When you step onto this battlefield, you must be prepared to die. That's right, and didn't Whitebeard already advise him? It was he who didn't listen to orders. Speaking of which, didn't Whitebeard ask some pirates to cover Little Oars Jr.? Where are they? Aren't they the ones over there shouting, Captain Little Oars Jr.? No, they're just shouting. 7 Treasure Glazed Tile School. The hall was silent, watching Little Oars Jr. collapse in the sky canopy. Ning Rongrong's eyes were already filled with tears, her nose felt sore, and she began to sob in a low voice. It's so touching, woo-woo. Just as she was immersed in her sorrow, the surroundings suddenly went quiet. She raised her hand to wipe the corners of her eyes, and upon looking up, she bumped into Ning Fengji, Sword Duluo, and Bone Duluo looking at her with a smile that was not quite a smile. Her cheeks instantly flushed red, and she hurriedly wiped away the remaining tear stains, muttering shyly and angrily, What are you doing, Dad, Grandpa Sword, Grandpa Bone? Ning Fengji laughed heartily and waved his hand. Uncle Sword, Uncle Bone, if you keep looking at Rongrong, she will really get angry. Ning Rongrong puffed out her cheeks, full of confusion. Don't you feel sad at all? Little Oars Jr. was clearly just a little bit away from saving Ace, and they were both so kind. We are naturally moved by it as well. Such pure friendship is rare in this world, Bone Duluo sighed. Ning Fengji restrained his smile, his tone becoming a bit more somber. Rongrong, you are still young and have not yet seen through the essence of war. The word, cruelty, is never just something to be said. But Little Oars Jr. didn't give up until the very end. Ning Rongrong was still unwilling to accept it. He couldn't even contend with a few Shichibukai. Ning Fengji raised his hand and pointed to Sengoku, who was sitting firmly at the top of the sky canopy, and there is still the fleet admiral of the navy sitting on the execution platform. This person's strength is unfathomable. Even if Little Oars Jr. broke through the Shichibukai defense line, there was absolutely no possibility of him reaching Ace. Ning Rongrong followed the gaze toward that calm and majestic figure, her heart sinking, and a look of bewilderment appeared on her face. Seeing this, Ning Fengji turned to look at the two-titled Duluo beside him and asked solemnly, Uncle Sword, Uncle Bone, according to your judgment, what level is the strength of these Shichibukai roughly at? Sword Duluo's gaze was heavy, and he slowly analyzed. Among them, Gecko Moria and the Pirate Empress have relatively weaker comprehensive strength. The Empress's ability is tricky and hard to guard against, and there is a power hidden in her body that is different from a spirit, which is very special. Moria's cultivation realm is similar to mine, both at the level of 96. Then in that case, can you defeat him? Ning Fengji asked further. In terms of raw strength, he is definitely no weakling. His shadow spirit is elusive, with both offense and defense, and he is definitely worthy of the level of a 96 ranked titled Duluo. Sword Duluo changed the subject, it's just that he has no fighting spirit, and his heart has long since collapsed. If they were to fight for a long time, the one to lose would inevitably be him. Bone Duluo realized upon hearing this, could it be what the Sky Canopy mentioned earlier, that he once competed with the 4 Emperors Kaido when he was young, and after a crushing defeat, he never recovered? It is highly likely. Sword Duluo nodded in agreement, then sighed. It is interesting to mention that his shadow spirit is similar to the Nara clan of the Naruto continent, but their development directions are completely different. One focuses on strong attacks and slaughter, while the other focuses on containment and crowd control. Each has its own merits. Ning Rongrong listened intently and couldn't help asking, what about the other Shichibukai? Sword Duluo raised his hand and rubbed the top of her head. Bartholomew Kuma and Doflamingo are in the same tier of strength. Kuma's ability is too profound. I can't grasp the depth of it for a moment, so it's hard to make a rash judgment. Doflamingo, on the other hand, has a spirit that is merely ordinary threads, yet he has utilized it to the extreme. With just a single thread, he can not only walk on air, but its sharpness is also terrifying. It can even easily sever Little Oars Jr.'s tough body. Bone Duluo added, his tone full of amazement. That continent has no spirit rings or spirit abilities, and even spirits are very rare, but their polishing and development of spirits are far beyond our imagination. Ning Fengji sighed. It seems there really is no useless spirit. Everyone present had a strange expression, just because there was a second half of the sentence that hadn't been said. But they also knew that after today, the second half of the sentence would refer to a certain person. Shrek Academy. Yu Shaogang seemed to be completely touched, suddenly straightening his body, and excitedly shouted loudly, you all saw it. There is no useless spirit, only useless spirit masters. His gaze swept over every student and teacher present, and the grievances, unwillingness, and obsessions that had accumulated for many years surged out. A mere thread spirit can still possess the power to sweep away strong enemies. Even the demon Little Ors Jr. cannot resist it, which shows that spirits have never had any distinction between high and low. He locked his gaze tightly on Flender, tears welling up in his eyes, his tone carrying a near fanatical stubbornness. Flender, did you see it? The principle I have always insisted on has never been wrong. Everyone was speechless for a moment, shocked by his unseemly state. Only Flender knew that he had been depressed and unable to resolve it for a long time, so he stepped forward, reached out to take him into his arms, and comforted him softly. I know, you have never been wrong, you are the Grandmaster. Years of knots collapsed at this moment, and Yu Xiaoging's tight emotions completely broke down, burying his head in Flender's shoulder and crying bitterly. I wasn't wrong. I really wasn't wrong. Zhao Wuji on the side opened his mouth, but the words reached his lips and he swallowed them silently. He thought to himself, the principle is indeed true, but if you follow this logic, wouldn't the only, useless, one left be you, Yu Xiaoging? But looking at the two people in front of him, he didn't want to pierce the bubble, so he could only shake his head secretly, pretending to look at the sky canopy, and said no more. Chapter 71, Akainu kills deserters. The sky canopy continued to play. Little Ors Jr.'s massive body crashed heavily onto the frozen sea surface, completely devoid of life. The shadow spears piercing his body disintegrated, turning into a sky full of shadow bats that scattered and eventually merged into the surrounding shadows. Mariah gazed at the fallen giant's corpse, a sharp glint erupting in his triangular eyes as he laughed wildly. Ha ha ha. Such a perfect body, it will surely make the strongest zombie. Mariah's words completely ignited the grief and rage on the battlefield. Whitebeard watched Little Ors Jr., who had sacrificed everything only to die on the spot, and a monstrous fury surged within his chest. He clenched his fists tightly, the air around him trembling faintly, yet his reason remained. If he were to rashly leave the ship to attack now, the battle situation would spiral completely out of control. A sorrowful sigh mixed with a roar echoed across the sea. Little Ors Jr. Just as everyone's focus was captivated by the death of Little Ors Jr., a giant vice admiral seized the gap, raised his heavy giant axe, and lunged forward under the cover of the crowd, the axe blade pointing directly at Whitebeard. Whitebeard, your opening has appeared. Facing the giant axe swinging down at him, Whitebeard's expression remained unchanged. He suddenly raised his right arm, and an invisible force of shock erupted. The sturdy giant axe crumbled inch by inch under the shockwave, fragments scattering everywhere. Before the opponent could react, he reached out, grabbed the giant vice admiral's head, and slammed it fiercely onto the deck of the Moby Dick, continuously pouring the power of vibration into him. With a thunderous explosion, the metal helmet instantly shattered into powder. The giant vice admiral didn't even have time to scream before he breathed his last. Whitebeard tossed the corpse back as if discarding a useless piece of debris. His movements were calm and indifferent, yet they carried a heart-stopping aura of killing intent. This crisp and decisive strike instantly captured everyone's attention. Doflamingo, who had just been mocking, and the triumphant Mariah both reined in their postures, their expressions grave, daring not to be the least bit presumptuous again. Whitebeard's gaze was as gloomy as a cold pool, staring fixedly at the execution platform in the distance, his voice rolling out like thunderous commands. Step over Little Ors Jr.'s body and keep moving forward. At his command, the Whitebeard pirates suppressed their grief, stepped over Little Ors Jr.'s mountain-like body, and charged forward once again into the artillery fire. Beneath the firmament, the people of the continent watched in astonishment, with discussions rising one after another. Too strong, a dignified giant vice admiral was killed in the blink of an eye, just like crushing an ant. Didn't they say he was old and frail? After launching a tsunami, he still has this kind of strength. Whoever believes that is a fool. Didn't you see Sengoku staring at Whitebeard with such a grave expression? Whitebeard has such high prestige in his pirate crew. He boosted morale instantly. Is that giant vice admiral joking? The admiral hasn't even moved, and he thinks he found an opening. Whitebeard was already full of rage. Someone just happened to come out for him to vent on. But why step over Little Ors Jr.'s corpse to move forward? Is it that cruel? Didn't you see? Little Ors Jr.'s body collapsed, the Navy's first line of defense. If they don't step over it, more people will sacrifice themselves. The sky canopy continued to play. The flames of war grew more intense. A division commander of the Whitebeard pirates with dual blades had his eyes split with rage, charging straight toward Doflamingo with blades in hand, his entire body surging with killing intent. Doflamingo, you actually did that to Little Ors Jr. I will absolutely not forgive you. Facing the opponent's monstrous rage, Doflamingo ignored it, only a low sneer spilling from his throat. Seeing this, the division commander's anger grew even more intense, and he shouted sternly, what exactly are you laughing at? Doflamingo slowly spread his arms, his posture arrogant as if he wanted to embrace the entire battlefield, his mad laughter resounding in all directions. I just feel that I am standing at the very center of the era. In the world today, the pattern is not yet set, and the trend is not yet determined. The division commander, impatient, raised his blade and slashed straight at him. Stop talking so much nonsense. Doflamingo dodged nimbly, a cryptic, mysterious smile always hanging on his face. He gently hooked his right fingertip, and in the next second, the division commander who was lunging with his blade stiffened all over, his limbs firmly restrained, unable to move anymore. The entire battlefield had long since descended into chaos, with endless slaughter. Even Navy rear admirals were falling one after another, blood constantly soaking the frozen earth. Amidst the crowd, Kobe watched helplessly as a familiar rear admiral died before his eyes, the tragic scene completely shattering his psychological defenses. He could no longer hold on, grabbed Helmeppo beside him, and fled toward the outskirts of the battlefield without looking back. I can't do it. Even rear admirals are falling in battle one after another. If we stay, we only have a dead end. The two ran blindly, fleeing all the way to the residential area in the rear, when a sharp reprimand suddenly rang out from ahead. Return to the battlefield immediately. Kobe's footsteps stopped abruptly, his heart tightening suddenly. Following the sound, he looked toward the corner, where the Navy Admiral Akainu was standing there, sternly lecturing another Navy soldier who had deserted. As a Navy soldier, you should shoulder the honor on your shoulders and face the pirates in a bloody battle. Cowards who flee in the face of battle and expose their backs to the enemy are not worthy of wearing the Navy uniform at all. Akainu slowly clenched his right hand, scorching magma surged out, and the crimson light made his expression appear even colder. He looked at the deserter with cold eyes. If you really care about your family, don't live a wretched life. The deserter wanted to argue, but killing intent flashed in Akainu's eyes. The red light flashed and disappeared, only a pool of slowly cooling magma remained on the spot, and the figure had completely vanished. Kobe broke out in a cold sweat, subconsciously grabbing Helmeppo, his heart filled with terror. Too cruel, even if it's a comrade, he shows no mercy at all. Just as the atmosphere was tense, a messenger Navy soldier hurried over and reported respectfully, Admiral Sakazuki, the predetermined operational plan is about to begin. Akainu's expression remained without a ripple, his tone cold and hard. Very good, the time has finally come. Having said that, he turned and stepped away, walking straight toward the distance, the scorching aura lingering around him causing the surrounding air to distort slightly. Under the sky canopy, the people watching the sky canopy were almost all panting heavily. So cold-blooded, he just kills when he says he will. Although desertion on the battlefield is shameful, but this is too extreme. Yeah, at least they need to be arrested and judged before being punished. Akainu is already an admiral. He should have this authority. There's no way around it, deserters are like that. Killing them on the spot, although a bit ruthless, there's nothing to say. Why didn't he kill those two deserters? Yeah, especially that guy named Kobe, he even wants to be an admiral. How is he not ashamed? Pity, Akainu went to carry out other combat missions. Otherwise, he would definitely have discovered them. Speaking of which, don't you find it strange? Akainu is an admiral, why is he acting as a military police force? Maybe he just can't stand this kind of thing. Chapter 72, N.A.N, I want to change my dad. Spirit Hall, Elder Hall. The people in the hall kept their eyes locked on the sky canopy. Qian Daliu frowned deeply and sighed, it really was just threads. Demon subduing Duluo stepped forward and asked in confusion, what is Big Brother talking about? Is it that scene where Doflamingo cut off the giant's foot earlier? Qian Daliu shook his head slowly, his gaze still fixed on the division commander frozen in the image. Think carefully, everyone. What exactly did he rely on to restrain that division commander? These words awakened everyone. The elders in the hall recalled the scene they had just witnessed, and a chorus of discussion erupted. Could it be threads as well? Impossible, I thought it was some kind of special binding ability. It's easy to understand how sharp threads can cut through a body, but how could they be used to bind a person? Everyone looked on in disbelief, completely unable to accept that threads could be developed to such an extent. That's right, Qian Daliu said with certainty, he used invisible threads to wrap around the limbs, trapping that division commander tightly. In my judgment, these threads can even directly control the movements of those he has bound. Gold Crocodile Duluo was silent for a long time before sighing sincerely, this person can truly be considered a genius, to think he could develop threads to such a level. Indeed, he is a 1 in a million talent. Qian Daliu agreed, his expression turning solemn, but I can clearly sense that there is a profound evil lurking in the depths of his heart. For such talent to fall into the hands of a person like this is by no means a blessing. Gold Crocodile Duluo looked confused, isn't he just a pirate? Isn't evil expected of them? The other elders nodded in succession, their eyes full of doubt. His evil is not as simple as mere burning, killing, and looting. Qian Daliu shook his head, his tone grave, it is a desire to throw the world into chaos. To destroy all the order in the world. My angel martial soul felt him and immediately wanted to purge him. That shows just how twisted his hard nature is. The others realized the truth upon hearing this, finally understanding that his evil far exceeded that of ordinary villains. No wonder he laughed so frantically as the Marineford War intensified. Thousand Jun Duluo recalled the scene on the battlefield and said, fortunately, his spirit is only threads. If he had been given a mythical zone spirit, combined with his talent, wouldn't he have already turned the world upside down? Qian Daliu nodded, a hint of disgust appearing on his brow. What is most contemptible is that, as one of the Shichibukai, he engages in such evil acts while still wearing the cloak recognized by the Navy, protected by so-called justice. Hey, how ironic, justice. Light Feather Duluo sighed helplessly, there is nothing to be done about it. From what we see on the sky canopy, the Navy on that ocean is merely a pawn used by the world government to balance various forces, it is filled with compromises and schemes everywhere. Qian Daliu closed his eyes and sighed, his heart filled with mixed emotions. He had always adhered to the tenets of the angel lineage, and seeing justice so distorted and trampled upon filled him with indignation. His thoughts drifted involuntarily to the past. The last person to trample on justice in such a way was his own son, Qian Zunji. Therefore, even though he knew the cause of his death, he had never once considered revenge, it was all self-inflicted. Clear Sky Sect. Inside the assembly hall, everyone watched Akainu executing deserters in public on the sky canopy. The Grand Elder spoke first, his tone carrying a touch of mockery. This Navy Admiral acts far too ruthlessly, truly placing so-called honor above life itself. This statement was ostensibly a comment on an outsider, but it actually had a hidden meaning. Everyone present understood the subtext, and their gazes fell squarely on N.A.N. N.A.N's expression darkened, and he immediately retorted, Grand Elder, that is inappropriate. That man deserted in the face of battle, which is a violation of military law. How can it be called cruel to deal with it according to the law? As for honor, I cannot agree with your view. If a sect loses its backbone and honor, how can it endure for long? The Grand Elder's lips curled into a meaningful smile as he asked indifferently, according to you, for the sake of so-called honor, everyone must go to their deaths. If the sect faces the danger of annihilation, and everyone is greedy for life and afraid of death, abandoning honor to survive, what is the point of staying alive? Tang San said firmly, even if such a sect were lucky enough to continue, it would have already broken its spine, leaving behind nothing but endless shame. As his voice fell, the atmosphere in the hall suddenly froze. The expressions of the elders turned ugly, their eyes filled with dissatisfaction as they looked at Tang San, and even Tang Xiao's expression turned heavy. Tang Xiao spoke first, his tone carrying a hint of severity. Little San, your thinking is too extreme. Assessing the situation and preserving strength has never been a mistake. Tang San wanted to continue arguing, but suddenly, several thick and majestic pressures descended from all directions. His whole body stiffened, his legs went weak, and he fell to his knees with a thud. He raised his head with difficulty, sweeping his gaze around, and a stormy sea surged in his heart. Except for Tang Xiao, all the elders present were releasing their spirit power pressure, and even his own father, Tang Hao, was looking at him with cold eyes, his aura ice cold and piercing. Why, father? Tang San screamed silently in his heart, filled with confusion and grievance. But Tang Hao only glanced at him coldly and let out a heavy snort. Enough. Seeing this, Tang Xiao quickly spoke up, raising his hand to block the pressure covering Tang San. Little San is still young and does not know the past. His inappropriate words are understandable. The pressure suddenly dissipated, and Tang San slumped on the ground, gasping for breath. The elders slowly withdrew their spirit power, their words full of admonition. HMPH, young man, do not be arrogant or speak recklessly. Tang Hao, you should discipline this son of yours properly. Seeing that his goal was achieved, the Grand Elder looked at Tang San, who was still struggling to calm his emotions, and asked again, what? Tang San, according to your words, if my Clear Sky sect does not listen to you, it is doomed to perish. Tang San had the words, it's hard to say, stuck in his throat, but seeing the anger and dissatisfaction in the eyes of everyone in the hall, he dared not speak his mind. He could only clench his fists tightly and lower his head, filled with resentment. He kept his head bowed so that others could not see the venom in his eyes, assuming he had already conceded. But he was screaming silently in his heart, this damned Clear Sky sect is clearly targeting me at every turn. And father, why do you stand on their side and look at me with cold eyes? I have already contributed the Tang sect legacy. A thought uncontrollably bubbled up, bitter yet fervent, if only my uncle were my father, how good that would be. ... The sky canopy continued to play. The pirates stepped on Little Oars Jr.'s massive body, and some had already successfully broken through the first line of defense. The pirate fleet on the sea behind wanted to turn their cannons to support them, but they were blocked by the terrain, and the artillery fire could no longer cover the front line. Just as the situation reached a stalemate, a blue figure rode a ship, breaking through the waves. The ship crashed through the frozen sea, forcibly smashing through layers of obstacles. The blue-haired woman stood at the bow and shouted loudly, let's go. With her call, the remaining pirates swarmed forward, and the entire team broke through the Navy's defense line, advancing toward the execution platform. Chapter 73 Jian Daoliu, you are talking bullshit. On the other side of the battlefield, Doflamingo's gaze fell upon Atmos, who was frozen in place, and he chuckled, what's wrong? The 13th Division commander of the Whitebeard Pirates. Buffalo, Atmos. His companions nearby saw him in danger and immediately raised their swords to rush forward and assist. But a bizarre scene suddenly occurred. Atmos abruptly turned his dual swords and slashed at the companions who came to help. Captain, what are you doing? The pirates were both shocked and suspicious. Atmos's face was full of panic, and he desperately tried to control his body, but it was to no avail. He could only wield his swords to constantly force everyone back, roaring anxiously, I can't control myself. Get away quickly. Before long, the pirates in this area were completely cleared out. Doflamingo enjoyed the chaos before his eyes, raised a hand to cover half his face, and laughed wildly. The world always says that pirates are evil and the Navy is good, but this concept has long been overturned repeatedly. People who have never experienced peace and people who do not know what the flames of war are have fundamentally different values. He looked up toward the highest point of the battlefield, his tone becoming increasingly arrogant. Only those who stand at the top of the world have the qualifications to define good and evil. In this position, there has never been an absolute stance. Ha ha ha, justice will prevail, that is just how it is, only the victor is worthy of being called justice. On the high platform, Sengoku sat motionless, and Whitebeard stood at the bow of the ship. Both of them had calm expressions, listening quietly to these remarks without saying a word. Everyone under the sky canopy savored these words. What sensible words. History is written by the victors. Even Whitebeard and Sengoku didn't object. As expected of a king, to be able to say such things. It makes sense, but he is too evil, actually manipulating someone to hack their own companions. The strings can be used like this. It's like turning that person into a puppet. Spirit Hall, Elder Hall. Hearing Doflamingo's wild theory, Qian Daoliu's face sank suddenly, and his thick, majestic spirit power erupted, causing the airflow in the hall to surge. Simply nonsense. Justice is justice from beginning to end, and evil is always evil. How can it be arbitrarily altered by victory or defeat? His gaze swept over the people in the hall, and he noticed that a few elders had slight changes in their expressions, obviously disturbed by that rhetoric. He immediately said in a deep voice. You might as well recall 10,000 years ago, before our ancestor ascended to the god position, the continent was rampant with evil spirit masters, and living beings suffered greatly. At that time, the people lived in dire misery. Would anyone have regarded the evil spirit masters who burned, killed, and looted as justice? Our ancestor stepped forward to restore order and save thousands of living beings. How many people would denounce him as evil? Perhaps there are a few petty people who would distort facts, but that is only because their own interests were damaged. Qian Daoliu's tone became increasingly grave, every word resonant. His words sound reasonable, but in reality, he treats the public as puppets. As fools who can be manipulated at will. After a slight pause, his gaze became firm as he stated the foundation of Spirit Hall. We, Spirit Hall, may not compete for hegemony with the powers of the world, but we must fulfill our duty. Purify the evil spirit masters. Prevent the world from returning to the rule of evil spirit masters. As long as Spirit Hall exists for one day, we will never give evil spirit masters a chance to make a comeback. Upon hearing this, the group of elders put away their distracting thoughts, their expressions solemn, and they all bowed in agreement. Big Brother's words are absolutely correct. We were deceived by this Doflamingo. I didn't expect this person to have such a high ability to bewitch others. Seeing that everyone had regained their original intention, the anger on Qian Daoliu's face dissipated slightly, but a chill remained between his brows. It seems now that I still underestimated the sinister nature in this person's bones. His tone was cold. This kind of hard nature that distorts right and wrong and judges based solely on victory or defeat is far more dangerous than an ordinary villain. Speaking of this, his aura flared up again, and his tone was decisive. If the dungeon selects me in the future, I will personally eliminate this person. ... Sea God Island. Great Priest Bo Saishi looked angry and said in a deep voice, according to this twisted logic, did the sea god's past control over the faith of the entire sea area turn into relying on power to force all living beings? Sea Maiden Duluo immediately agreed, her tone full of indignation. Back then, the sea god and the deep sea demon whale king competed for the faith of the sea area, which was originally a confrontation between the two major camps of the human race and the spirit beasts. In the sea area, the human race was originally scarce, and the sea god was initially at a disadvantage. But the deep sea demon whale king only knew how to blindly plunder and take, never protecting the living beings under his command, instead pushing the vast majority of sea spirit beasts to the sea god's side. The sea god finally defeated his opponent. It was the collective choice of all living beings in the entire sea. It was justice that determined victory, absolutely not the so-called, the victor is justice. The mermaid race possesses the dual bloodline of the human race and spirit beast. She knew this past event in great detail. Unable to calm her anger, her words lost their usual restraint. Everyone on the island was filled with righteous indignation. After their emotions calmed down a little, Sea Dragon Duluo's gaze fell on the strangely shaped icebreaker in the sky canopy. Feeling curious, this ship looks very strange. Looking at its structure, it is clearly built specifically for breaking ice. Great Priest Bo Saishi also became interested, examined it carefully for a moment, and couldn't help but admire. Using the weight of the boat to crush the ice layer, the design is truly ingenious. It seems that the nautical skills of that world have already reached the peak. Everyone also successively saw the trick, and someone's eyes lit up. If we also learn this shipbuilding method, we can sail into the far North Sea and further promote the faith of the sea god. As soon as this was said, it was immediately agreed upon by everyone. Great Priest Bo Saishi shook her head slowly and vetoed it. Absolutely not. The far north has its own legacy. The local living beings believe in the ice god. Rashly going there to preach will inevitably trigger chaos among the spirit beasts. Someone asked, with the Great Priest's strength, can you not reconcile it? The far north is guarded by a supreme spirit beast named Snow Empress. In that icy world, her strength is not inferior to mine. Great Priest Bo Saishi said sternly, do not provoke disputes for no reason. After hearing this, everyone had to give up this idea. The sky canopy continued to play. Frontline Marines rushed onto the execution platform and reported in a deep voice, Fleet Admiral Sengoku. The two defense lines at the bay entrance have been breached, and a large number of pirates under Whitebeard have flooded into the bay. Sengoku's expression was calm, and he didn't care about this at all. He picked up the Den Den Mushi nearby and said in a deep voice, Suru, initiate the plan. On the other side, Vice Admiral Suru held the N.A.N. Mushi and replied, "The timing is just right." Before she finished speaking, two pirates brandished their weapons and charged at her aggressively. Vice Admiral Suru just lifted her eyes and glanced at them lightly, and a strange power instantly enveloped the two. In the next second, the figures of the two fierce pirates changed drastically, standing there dumbfounded like clothes that had been completely stretched flat and dried. They even said happily, "It's much more refreshing all of a sudden." She didn't look at the two anymore and gave orders loudly to the N.A.N. Mushi, "Notify all soldiers on the entire fleet." Chapter 74, is Garp really not raising pirates specifically? Blub blub, blub blub. The ringing of N.A.N. Mushi echoed across the entire bay, one after another. Instructions were transmitted along communication lines to every warship in every position, and all Navy soldiers received the orders. Closing square bracket. On the prow of the Moby Dick, Whitebeard frowned deeply, his aura becoming increasingly heavy. Closing square bracket. He stared fixedly at Sengoku on the execution platform, secretly wary in his heart. What exactly is this guy planning? The tactician, Sengoku the Buddha. Closing square bracket. At the same time, the sky canopy displayed the introduction of Vice Admiral Suru. Closing square bracket. Vice Admiral Suru. Spirit, Paramesha, Purification. A pillar of the Navy's tacticians, she supported the Navy alongside Sengoku and Garp even before the Great Pirate Era, possessing profound experience. Closing square bracket. Her prestige among female Navy officers is extremely high, she is a veteran-level combatant of the Navy. Closing square bracket. Ability effect, can wash and dry people like clothes, causing them to lose their strength and become unable to move. Closing square bracket. Special effect, purifies the mind, weakens malice, and makes enemies become docile. Closing square bracket. Everyone under the sky canopy watched all of this in stunned silence. Are the spirits of the pirate continent also strange? What the hell is a purification spirit? Quote. Being able to purify people like doing laundry. This ability is just too much of a joke. Quote. The pirate continent is reshaping my worldview again and again, especially the Paramesha spirits. Quote. I suspect that the pirate continent has thrown all the strange spirits in there. Zone and Logia types I can still understand. Quote. The Navy really is full of hidden talents. Quote. But what exactly is Sengoku's plan? Quote. Not sure, but Sengoku is definitely not simple, otherwise he wouldn't make Whitebeard treat him like such a formidable enemy. Quote. I feel like when Whitebeard was young, he must have fought many times against the older generation like Sengoku, otherwise he wouldn't be so familiar with him. Quote. A tactician, huh, it seems he is resourceful. Quote. The camera on the sky canopy switched abruptly, focusing on Garp on the steps of the execution platform. He paced back and forth, his expression complex, his thoughts clearly already in a mess. Closing square bracket. The scene shifted, and the days of the past slowly unfolded. Closing square bracket. Many years ago, Port Gizdi. Rouge solemnly handed the infant Ace into Garp's arms. At that time, Garp's hair and beard were jet black. Closing square bracket. Scenes of the past flashed by, and finally the image returned to the present. Garp stepped onto the execution platform, went straight to Ace's side, and gazed at the battlefield ahead with a heavy look. Closing square bracket. Seeing Garp suddenly appear, Ace spoke subconsciously, "Old man." Quote closing square bracket. Sengoku frowned and questioned, "What are you doing coming here? Do you have objections to the battle plan?" Quote closing square bracket. No. Garp's tone was cold and hard, the opponent is a pirate, and they aren't worthy of sympathy to begin with. Quote closing square bracket. Sengoku clearly didn't want him to stay here and was about to continue persuading him, but his words were interrupted directly by Garp, "Shut up. So what if I stay here?" Quote closing square bracket. After speaking, he simply sat down right there, next to Ace. Closing square bracket. The light and shadow of the sky canopy changed again, sinking into Garp's memories. Closing square bracket. A heavy punch landed, and the young Ace fell to the ground. A little boy wearing a straw hat immediately stepped forward, supporting Ace with a face full of worry. Closing square bracket. What are you doing, old man? Little Ace was rebellious, tilting his head to glare at Garp, refusing to give in at all. Closing square bracket. Garp was both angry and anxious. You keep saying you want to go to sea, I will never agree to it. Quote close square bracket. You aren't my parents, so why do you get to control me? You don't need to lecture me. Ace retorted, stiffening his neck. Closing square bracket. You won't even call me grandpa. Garp stood up, feigning fierceness as he raised his fist. Do you want to taste my fist of love again? Quote closing square bracket. Ace pursed his lips and said nothing, but Luffy, who was on the side, hopped over and shouted loudly, Pa. I want to get stronger too, I want to go to sea with Ace. Quote closing square bracket. With a dull thud, the fist landed solidly on top of Luffy's head, instantly raising a red, swollen bump. Closing square bracket. So painful, Luffy wailed, covering his head. Closing square bracket. Don't bully Luffy. Ace immediately stood up, shielding little Luffy behind him, looking at Garp with wary eyes. Closing square bracket. Garp was stunned on the spot. He actually called me an old geezer. Quote closing square bracket. Night fell, and the scene shifted to a forest clearing. The three grandfather and grandson sat around a campfire, the roasted meat on the fire sizzling with oil, the aroma overflowing. Closing square bracket. Garp swallowed the food in big gulps, exhorting them while eating. Listen, in order to cope with everything that might happen, you must eat your fill. This is the basic quality of a Navy soldier. Quote closing square bracket. Then, Ace and Garp started arguing again about whether to be a Navy soldier or a pirate. Closing square bracket. But Luffy on the side had already wiped out the food, touching his round belly, his eyes curving into crescents as he smiled with satisfaction. It's so delicious. Quote closing square bracket. Ace was raised by Garp. Quote. How did this happen? Isn't Garp a Navy hero? How did he raise the Pirate King's son? Quote. That's right. Back then, the Navy went to great lengths to exterminate the last trace of the Pirate King's bloodline. It turns out there was a mole in the Navy. Quote. No wonder, why the Navy laid out a net but still failed. Quote. But why, since Garp raised him, shouldn't he have trained him to be in the Navy? Why did he still become a pirate? Quote. That's not all, Garp's other grandson also wants to be a pirate. Quote. Is Garp really in the Navy? Isn't he specifically raising pirates? Quote. However, that Luffy sure can eat. It feels like his stomach is about to burst. Quote. Ha ha ha, Ace was right, if little Luffy became a Navy soldier, he could eat the warship empty. Quote. But why is it memories again? Whenever it comes to the pirate continent, it's always memories. Quote. I have a bad premonition, the last one that was this heartwarming was the fourth Hokage couple from the Naruto continent. As it turned out, they both died for love. Quote. The sky canopy continued to play. On the execution platform, Garp's back looked hunched and weathered. Closing square bracket. Pirates are certainly not worthy of sympathy, but family is different after all. Quote closing square bracket. The voice of this typically iron-willed tough guy carried an irrepressible sob. Ace clearly heard that this man, who had been strong his whole life, was actually letting out suppressed sobs. Closing square bracket. What on earth am I supposed to do? Ace, you bastard, why did you insist on not walking the path I arranged for you? Quote closing square bracket. Looking at the tearful Garp, Ace felt a mix of emotions, his mask of feigned calmness shattered completely, and he whispered, old man. Quote closing square bracket. Beside him, Sengoku's expression was cold and hard, his gaze locked tightly on Garp, his tone carrying a stern warning. At this point, if you intend to pull any tricks, I will never forgive you, Garp. Quote closing square bracket. Garp raised his hand to wipe the tears from his face and let out a heavy cold snort. If I wanted to do something, I would have done it long ago. Quote closing square bracket. How difficult, Garp. On one side is the grandson he raised, and on the other is the Navy glory he has upheld his whole life. Quote. Why does it feel like Sengoku has been staring at Garp the whole time? Quote. It's really complicated, choosing between loyalty and family. Quote. But Garp still made a choice. He chose the Navy. Quote. It's really cruel to make a grandfather watch his grandson's execution with his own eyes. Quote. Why did Ace want to go to sea? Couldn't he just be in the Navy? With a Navy hero for a grandfather, what couldn't he succeed at? Quote. Chapter 75. What kind of spirit can turn a person into an Okama? Did you notice the snails in their hands? They can actually use this for long-distance communication. How amazing. Yeah, I wonder what kind of creature this is. And it has this function. This pirate continent is truly wonderful. It would be great if we could bring one back to raise. Even if you brought it back, it wouldn't be your turn, the nobles are already waiting for it. The sky canopy continued to play. The order spread throughout the entire bay, and all the Navy on the plaza received instructions, abandon original deployments and execute Fire Fist Ace immediately. But just at this moment, many Navy soldiers subconsciously looked up at the sky, their eyes filled with shock and suspicion. What is that thing in the sky? Whitebeard and Sengoku, whose perception far exceeded that of ordinary people, had already sensed the anomaly. The two locked their eyes on the firmament, only to see black shadows appearing in the distant void realm. The shadows approached rapidly, their outlines constantly enlarging, revealing themselves to be a ship flying through the air, with several figures floating around the hull. Mid-air, a group of people were arguing incessantly, the noisy curses and complaints drifting down to the battlefield with the wind. "I told you that you went too far. It's all this guy's fault for blinking," came a fierce voice. "Trying to shift the blame onto me, crocodile. There's ice below, we're going to die." ... The entire battlefield fell into a deathly silence, and the audience beneath the sky canopy was also dumbfounded. No one expected that a group of people would suddenly intrude into this decisive battle. Among the crowd, a young man wearing a straw hat swayed his body, suppressed the surging emotions in his heart, and shouted loudly toward the direction of the execution platform, his voice piercing through layers of smoke. "Ace! Is that the grown-up Luffy? He came too. Is this a jailbreak? That's too casual. How did that ship get into the sky? Forget about that, they look like they're about to fall to their deaths. That's not the sea below. It's all ice." The sky canopy's camera tightly followed the falling ship, which landed exactly on the original site of the giant iceberg that Jozu had thrown earlier. The iceberg had long since shattered in the melee, and the churning seawater below just happened to catch the hull, cushioning the impact of the fall. The group, having fallen from the ship and being devil fruit users unable to step on the sea, sank into the water one after another. Jinbei, one of the Shichibukai, maneuvered swiftly in the water, reaching underwater again and again to fish out the people who had fallen in and send them to a safe area. As the chaos subsided slightly, Luffy steadied himself by holding the ship's railing, his eyes scanning the battlefield above urgently. After searching several times, he finally spotted Ace on the high execution platform. Luffy took a deep breath, unable to suppress his excitement, and shouted loudly at the top of his lungs, "Ace!" Ace, restrained by shackles, turned his head upon hearing the voice, his eyes instantly lighting up, and he responded loudly as well, "Luffy! I finally found you, Ace! I'm coming to save you right now." A brilliant smile bloomed on Luffy's face. Sengoku, on the execution platform, looked at the group of Jinbei, Crocodile, and Ivankov who had suddenly appeared, his face turning livid. He turned to Garp beside him and scolded angrily, "Damn Garp! It's your family again." Garp felt his head throbbing, clutching his skull tightly with both hands. He was confused and helpless, never expecting such a turn of events, and shouted, "Luffy, how did you run here too?" The Navy camp below was in an uproar, and everyone identified the newcomers, with exclamations rising one after another. "It's Straw Hat Luffy! And the revolutionary Ivankov, I didn't expect him to have escaped from Impel Down too. Even Crocodile has appeared." The group of people behind them are all heavy criminals from Impel Down, all heinous big pirates. The Shichibukai each had their own thoughts, with different expressions. Dracula Mahawk frowned slightly and said indifferently, as expected of the man who was always at the center of the storm, Straw Hat. Mariah stared fixedly at Luffy, fierce light flashing in his triangular eyes, his tone filled with intense hostility, "Straw Hat." Hancock on the side had swirling eyes, her cheeks flushed, looking at Luffy with full admiration, whispering softly, "Luffy, it's great that you're okay." Doflamingo laughed loudly and teasingly, "Interesting, the old and new Shichibukai are gathered together. Is this the legendary supernova, Straw Hat?" At the front of the execution platform, Akainu surged faintly with magma, his fists clenched tight, and a biting killing intent rushed towards them. He locked his eyes on Luffy, his voice cold as ice, "This is him, right? The grandson of the Navy hero Garp, and the son of the revolutionary dragon. He must also be completely eradicated." At the same time, the sky canopy began to introduce Luffy and Ivankov. Monkey D. Luffy. Captain of the Straw Hat Pirates, son of the revolutionary dragon, grandson of Garp, sworn brother of Ace. Spirit. Rubber, surface form, level 79. Body can freely stretch and shrink, rebound blunt attacks, and launch limbs. Combat move. Gear second, high-speed blood circulation, explosive speed boost, steam all over the body, overdrafting lifespan. Gear third, bone balloon, giant fist, huge power but slower speed. Emporio Ivankov. Commander of the G Army of the Revolutionary Army, Queen of the Kamabaka Kingdom. Spirit, hormone, level 93. Core ability. Manipulate human hormones, reconstruct the body from the inside, known as the human engineer. Healing hormone. Save the dying, at the cost of 10 years of life. Excitement hormone. Eliminate fatigue, short-term combat power burst. Gender transformation hormone. Freely change the gender of oneself and enemies. How lucky, just happened to land there. But this Luffy seems very famous. The whole battlefield is paying attention to him. Did you hear that? What Akainu said? Luffy is Garp's grandson, Dragon's son. Doesn't that mean Dragon is Garp's son? And his spirit is not simple either. The rubber spirit introduced by the sky canopy is already powerful enough, but it turned out to be just the surface layer. Could his spirit be a divine rank spirit? How is that possible? The divine rank spirits of the pirate continent are almost all mythical zone, that Straw Hat is clearly Paramesha. That's true, no matter how much a spirit changes, the type shouldn't change too. But this Luffy really has high talent. Only a teenager and already level 79. With high talent and such a heaven-defying background, wouldn't it be better to be a navy? I now think Garp cultivated it on purpose. Both Luffy and Ace want to be pirates, and his son Dragon is even worse, directly becoming a rebel. Indeed, is Garp really not an undercover agent in the navy? But compared to being a revolutionary, it's clearly much less worrying for Luffy to be a pirate. Damn, how high is the gold content of Garp's Navy hero title? He cultivated a rebel and still wasn't kicked out of the Navy. By the way, didn't you notice Ivankov's spirit? Hormone, too perverted, right, it can change the gender of men and women. It can even turn people into okamas. Too evil, this spirit, the spirits of the pirate continent really refresh my worldview again and again. What a terrifying spirit, it has recovery, attacks, and even this kind of divine skill. Who dares to fight him? And he himself is dressed so strangely. He looks like a pervert. By the way, is Ivankov a man or a woman? Chapter 76, A Four Emperors Actually Lost an Arm in the East Blue. Spirit Hall, Supreme Pontiff Palace. Yuji watched the live-action Pirate King displayed on the sky canopy, his heart filled with emotions. Luffy has appeared, the entire battlefield is about to be thrown into chaos. As expected of the fruit that causes the most trouble. Bibi Dong, standing to the side, frowned slightly and turned to look at Yuji. Xiaoji, among the information you obtained from the sky canopy, is there any about this straw hat? Yuji found it very strange. Why would Bibi Dong ask this question? Teacher, did you notice something? I can clearly perceive a remarkably unique power dormant within his body, Bibi Dong said with a grave expression. Its texture is similar to divine force, yet it is quite different from ordinary divine energy, it is difficult to determine for certain. Is this the power he has hidden? Yuji clicked his tongue inwardly, calling it absurd in his heart. The five elders searched for over 1,000 episodes and didn't find it, yet you guessed it mostly right with just one glance. Teacher, you really make me look at you with new eyes. Bibi Dong analyzed it to herself. This power is neither spirit power nor the chakra from another world, its aura transcends that of ordinary mortal beings. I judge that this must be the unique divine force of the pirate continent. Yuji circled around Bibi Dong, looking at the familiar rabbit and honey peach. He said while looking, nothing has changed. Teacher, how did you become so amazing? Having experienced even more shameful things, Bibi Dong didn't even take these minor antics to heart. Instead, she puffed out her chest, making the little rabbit even more active. Why, do you still want to look? After hearing this, Yuji chuckled, let's look again tonight. After receiving a helpless eye roll from Bibi Dong, he spoke seriously, according to the information from the sky canopy, Monkey D. Luffy's spirit is ostensibly rubber, but in reality, it is the sun god. Bibi Dong realized suddenly after hearing this, that is no surprise. A divine rank spirit. Yuji thought to himself, indeed, it even cured Might Guy's addiction to being a king. ... The sky canopy continued to play. Sengoku's expression was solemn as he looked at Jinbei in the crowd and asked in a deep voice, I didn't expect you to act together with the straw hat. Is this your choice, Jinbei? That's right, Jinbei said with a frank tone, from today on, I resign from my position as one of the Shichibukai. Just as Sengoku was about to speak, Garp spoke up first, his gaze sweeping over Luffy and his group, full of scrutiny. No matter how you look at it, this combination is very strange. Prisoners, officers of the Revolutionary Army, and a bunch of weird guys. His gaze finally settled on Crocodile, and Crocodile, I don't think you have the same goal as them, at least not on this battlefield. Crocodile completely ignored the surrounding gazes, his sight piercing through the smoke and dust, firmly locking onto the tall figure at the bow of the ship, Whitebeard. On the other side, Ivankov looked left and right, shouting in confusion, where did that guy Crocodile go? Buggy the Clown said subconsciously, he must have been scared by this big scene. Then, looking back, he suddenly said, there, he actually got there first. I saw Crocodile's lower body turn into sand filling the sky, taking advantage of the wind to quickly sweep towards the Moby Dick, appearing behind Whitebeard in an instant. He curled his lips into a ferocious smile, long time no see, Whitebeard. A cold light flashed, and the golden hook coated in sharp energy carried a gust of wind, aiming straight for Whitebeard's head.